What is up, guys? What is up? So today I'm going to talk about Tucker Carlson and the Iran war a little bit more. Yesterday, my video covered some of the highlights of the Tucker Carlson and Huckabee interview. There was many clips that I couldn't cover. I suggest you guys checking those clips out. But I actually wanted to cover Tucker's intro to the interview because his intro had a backstory about his experience going to Israel, his experience with the interview itself. There's a lot of stuff in that backstory that's pretty telling, and it was worth me making a video on, so I'm going to cover that. So, yeah, let's get into it, shall we? Boom! Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share, and hit the bell on my YouTube at Townsley R. And follow me on X at RyanTownslay. So, as you guys know, this was updated 5 hours ago. The U.S. deploys largest Middle Eastern force since 2003 Iraq invasion. So we might see a war potentially within a few hours from today, maybe tomorrow, maybe negotiations go normal. But this is basically what it says. The buildup includes the USS Abraham Lincoln in the Arabian Sea, destroyers patrolling the Strait of Hormuz, and the U.S. Gerald R. Ford heading near Israel, all triggered to stalled tanks and Iran's uranium enrichment, missiles, and proxy support. Trump gave Iran 10 to 15 days to comply, while a retired admiral said U.S. forces could launch hundreds of strikes daily to neutralize threats. Online critics call Iran no real threat to America and decry foreign entanglements, but others warn of nuclear risk from decades of proxy attacks on U.S. troops. Now, do I think that a war with Iran is the most important thing that we should be focusing on? Absolutely not, okay? Now, my opinion has been pretty consistent about it. Like, if we're just going to strike them here and there, if we're not going to kill innocent civilians, if it's just a one and done surgical military operation, I'm okay with it. I honestly don't see a big deal in military operations that are very surgical and very careful. Now, if we're talking about a full-on war, like the war between the Palestinians and the Israelis, that is the type of stuff I do not support. So if this Iran war turns into boots on the ground, killing American soldiers, killing innocent Iranians, then I will be fully against it. And I will also be fully against it if it costs trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. Because I do not like big government spending. Doesn't matter if Republicans or Democrats spend. Doesn't matter. I don't like big government spending. So that's my take on it. I will analyze whatever comes out of this, but I think we should get into what Tucker is on to when it comes to Israel, because Israel's influence on the United States and Israel's influence on this Iran conflict is a little bit telling. So let's just listen to Tucker. I encourage you guys to watch the full, it's a 2 hour and 45 minute interview. We're only going to watch the intro right now. I suggest you guys check it out. It's on Tucker Carlson's YouTube channel called Tucker Carlson Confronts Mike Huckabee on America's Toxic Relationship with Israel. Yeah, let's get into this intro.
We're about to play you an interview we did with U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee 2 days ago in Israel. In general, it's never worth talking about the backstory behind an interview. It's kind of not the point. It makes it about the interviewer, not the person being interviewed. For one thing. For another, it's not that interesting most of the time. And for another, it's kind of off the record. You know, the other person hasn't consented to you telling the story. So in general, we don't do that. Who'd want to hear that? Let the interview speak for itself. But in this case, we want to tell you just a few things about how this interview came about, because they are pretty interesting, revealing, and now weirdly relevant, apparently. So this interview with Mike Huckabee came about a couple of weeks ago on Twitter. One of our producers showed me. He said something to the effect of, "You're talking to Middle Eastern Christians, Tucker Carlson. Maybe you should talk to me."
And we're sure this is shocking for many of you that are just hearing the news.
Why don't you come do an interview? And I paused for a minute. I've thought in the past about trying to interview Mike Huckabee, whom I've known for over 30 years and worked adjacent to at Fox. And I had mixed feelings about it, mostly because it's hard if you're me to interview Mike Huckabee because of just the personal affect. Mike Huckabee is jovial, comes off as friendly. He's a grandfather. When annoyed, I can be nasty in interviews. And so it takes a lot of self-control to interview someone like Mike Huckabee, not because I hate him, but because it's hard to ask him tough questions and not come off as a jerk, which I often am. So, but I thought in this case, yeah, I should definitely do this for a bunch of different reasons. Mainly, the United States is moving toward a big war, a real war with Iran, a regime change war, the biggest war we've had since the invasion of Iraq in the spring of 2003. And Israel is driving that. We are doing this at the behest, at the demand of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So it seems like now is the time for more Americans to understand the dynamic between the U.S. and Israel and to call attention to that. And for another, Huckabee's behavior in the last year in Jerusalem as the ambassador has been very, very striking. He famously had a meeting with the most damaging spy in American history. And why did he do that? He hadn't been asked by anybody up until 2 days ago, why did you do that? So I wanted to be able to ask him that. And so we accepted, and then began the usual negotiations about when and where the interview would take place. And we were constrained because we weren't expecting this. We wanted to do it quickly, but we had tons of travel. So we threw them a date, them being the American embassy. We can do it on this date. And they were very accommodating. And then the question became, well, where do we do it? And maybe a Christian holy site. We said, we've got to get in and out really quick, got to be back to do a bunch of other interviews, but we've got this time frame. They said, well, why don't you do it at the U.S. Embassy? Or maybe we said that. Great, U.S. Embassy. So the U.S. Embassy is about an hour, 55 minutes from the big airport in Israel, Ben Gurion. So we said, okay, what about security? Now, at this time, the Israeli government, the prime minister included, were attacking me in this show. Netanyahu suggested I was a Nazi, for example. And so we thought, how about security? Obviously. Not because the Israeli government necessarily would do something bad, because there are a lot of people in Israel who think, because they've been told, that I'm an anti-Semite or a Nazi or want to kill Jews. It's kind of crazy overstatement.
And it's kind of crazy that we've gotten to the point where it's not just the left that's calling conservatives Nazis and fascists and anti-Semites. Now it's right-wing Israeli or Christian-Zionist that are now calling people like Tucker conservatives anti-Semites. We have come a full circle. And now it doesn't even feel like the enemy is just the left. Now the enemy feels like Israel, or at least, Christian-Zionist, or just Zionist in general. And like I said, guys, I have no hatred towards the Jews. I am not racist to the Jews. I have no problem with them practicing the religion. I have a problem with this type of corruption, with this type of organized effort to try to take down someone like Tucker Carlson for exposing the truth. That's what I have a problem with.
All untrue, obviously, but it would be good to have security. And I should say, having done interviews on 6 out of 7 continents over 35 years, I'm not very security conscious at all. Never really feel uncomfortable, but this seemed like a prudent thing to do. So we were told by the embassy spokesman, no, we're not going to provide security. And so we said, okay, I guess we'll get private security. But could we get someone from the embassy to ride in the car with us from the airport to the interview? And we were told, no. Could we get what they call a control officer, just an American, with us, in an official capacity as an embassy employee with us? No, quote, for legal reasons, we can't do that. So I thought, well, that's very strange. And then they said, but instead, we're turning you over to the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, MFA, and they're going to arrange everything in Israel. Well, this was within 24 hours of the Deputy Foreign Minister, Sharon Haskell, releasing a video calling me an anti-Semite and an enemy of Israel. This was the person who the embassy was telling us was going to handle all of our travel. So it was at this point that I just called. I called the spokesman for the U.S. Embassy in Israel, and I said, okay, I'm an American citizen responding to an invitation from the American ambassador to Israel. And by the way, I'm the son of a U.S. ambassador, so I have some sense, not an expert, obviously, but I have some sense of how this works. And I think that the U.S. ambassador has discretion to send somebody from his office to the airport to accompany someone in. I think that's right. And if it's not right, tell me what law you're talking about, what legal reason you're talking about that would prevent that. And now you're sending me over to a government official who's been calling me a Nazi? That's the person in charge of getting us to the embassy? Like, what is going on here? And the embassy spokesman, who's totally nice, said, well, this was the decision of someone called David Brownstein. He's the DCM, the number 2 guy in the embassy. And I said, well, put him on a text exchange. Like, what is going on here? And so Brownstein got on and didn't answer the question, but basically said, well, okay, let's just do the interview at the airport in the diplomatic reception area at the airport. Okay.
That is so weird. Like, it's so hard to get an American to help escort Tucker to the embassy. And then now they're just like, oh, we're just going to do it at the airport. Like, what a way to treat an American. It's just kind of crazy that they're just treating Tucker like shit. If this is true, if what Tucker is saying is true, then allegedly these Israelis are treating him like shit.
Okay, I said, we're going to be flying in from Europe, and we had to be in and out really quickly. So at great expense, we chartered a plane, which I never do because I'm cheap. But we did. And so then I said to them, okay, I want to send you the flight information, tail number, flight number, route, and I want you to pass that on to the Israeli military just so, they don't mistake us for an Iranian drone or something. I mean, not to be paranoid, but again, this is probably the most violent country in the world, Israel. Is there a country in the world where a higher percentage of the population has held a gun or shot someone? I mean, I don't know the answer, but this is a country famously waging a 7-front war with all of its neighbors, so this is also the country that bombed the USS Liberty, knowing, we know this from NSA intercepts, that it was an American ship. So don't, just send the military our flight information and, we can all just sort of know it's on the record and we can all calm down a little bit. No, they said. The U.S. Embassy said, no, this is, your flight is not a matter of concern to the Israeli military. I said, okay, now you're making me uncomfortable. Isn't the airspace of Israel the purview of the Israeli military? Aren't they in charge of maintaining the integrity of their airspace? When you fly over the country of Israel or any country, its military keeps track of you because that's their job. So why wouldn't you send our flight information to the Israeli military? You're making me nervous.
Hey guys, it's Cool Cat Fence again. You've been seeing our trucks everywhere, you've been seeing our ads everywhere, but I'm coming at you with one last important message before we hit the spring rush.
I sent this exchange. I took a screenshot of it and sent it to a bunch of people, including in the U.S. government, because I'm not a paranoid person and I'm not a jumpy person. I said, is this weird behavior? Yeah, it's really weird behavior. All of them said that. So I got pretty aggressive and just said, look,
America's greatest ally is treating Tucker Carlson like shit. They're making him feel uncomfortable. They don't want to work with him. They're actually kind of treating him like an enemy. And I don't know if you guys have seen the rhetoric, but there's a lot of Zionists, Christian-Zionists too, that are painting Tucker as like someone from Qatar that like supports Qatar. And Tucker's like this guy that supports radical Islam. It's like, so obviously if you're going to paint Tucker as borderline Islamic terrorist, then obviously Tucker is going to feel kind of nervous going into Israel. It'd be like, if I was a famous podcaster, which I'm not, but if I ended up my podcast being very, very popular and you had left-wing people calling me a Nazi, and then I went into the middle of Minnesota, I'd be a little nervous that someone would want to jump me, harass me, just like Tucker is nervous in Israel. So our greatest ally treating Tucker like this, it's kind of fishy. It's really fishy.
You got to do this. Okay. And they to their credit, got back to us and said, yes, we will do that. But I just thought that was completely bizarre and menacing, by the way. Now, at the same time, and I think this is relevant, certainly it goes to motive, I was attempting to set up a meeting, as I have been for the past 3 months, with the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, who I've dealt with a lot in the past, and who denounced me as a Nazi in public, a member of the woke Reich. And why was I trying to do that? Not an interview. I knew he wouldn't sit for an interview, but I wanted just to meet with him in person. One, to show that I'm willing to go to Israel. I don't hate Israel as a country. But two, just to say directly to him, this is bad. This should be de-escalated. This kind of rhetoric doesn't help anybody. Calling me specifically, a Nazi and an anti-Semite when you know that I'm not. By the way, if I was, I would just admit it. I've said many times I think anti-Semitism is immoral. It's against my religion, just as hating any group on the basis of their bloodline is immoral. So the new year is here, but that does not mean you've got to overhaul your changes here and there from standard American chip brands.
All right, guys, look at Tucker's ad. It's on the bottom. I'm going to skip it, though.
They don't need chips, small ingredients, no seed oil afterly, but the chips, or you can click the link in standing offer. And so I really pushed hard for this meeting, and I called a lot of people who know him and who are in regular contact with him. In fact, I went to go see some of those people directly. Please, can you help me get a sit down for 5 minutes with Benjamin Netanyahu? And I probably called or met with 6, 7, 8, maybe more people on this question. People in official capacities, people in the Israeli government. I know a number of people in the Israeli government, people in Israel, a friend of mine in California who knows him. I mean, I really, really tried. And I did so for 2 reasons. One, because there was a threat to my family. The Israeli government and Netanyahu himself tried to punish 2 members of my family. I won't be more specific, but actually punish 2 members of my family.
Whoa. That's kind of creepy. So now the Israeli government allegedly is threatening his family? Like that's what I'm saying. The Israeli government is like the real deep state. I mean, think about it. You criticize their government, they harass your family. I mean, what are we talking about? We're talking about like a mafia leader that, obviously if Israel was the perfect saint that they've been painted to be, then they wouldn't need to harass Tucker, right? But obviously there's something else going on.
Because he has said in public many times, believes in blood guilt, Amalek. When someone commits a crime against you, you punish not just him, but his family, his bloodline. There's no idea that's less Western than that, more anti-Christian than that. Christians reject that. Netanyahu doesn't. That's why he's talking about Amalek. And he was going after my family, literally. So I felt very threatened by that. But moreover, I think it's bad for my country to have people using that kind of language. Round them up, bring them to the camps, gas chambers, Nazis, anti-Semitism. It scares the heck out of people. It makes people crazy and hysterical. And certainly in my case, none of that is true. I hate collective punishment. I hate attacking people on the basis of their bloodline. I hate anti-Semitism and anti-white racism and all of this, or any kind of racism, period. And I've said that a lot. So using that kind of language against someone who is not fundamentally your enemy, who just, in my case, I want Christians in areas controlled by Israel to be treated with dignity, to have rights. And I don't want the U.S. government involved in a war, a regime change war with Iran. Those are my priorities, and I've said them out loud. I have no secret agenda. So to attack me as a Nazi for saying that suggests a total unwillingness.
She dances, not just to move, but to awaken something
to compromise. Anyone who doesn't agree with us 100% must be destroyed. His family must be attacked, my family, and must be written off as a Nazi. Well, when you do that, it makes people hysterical. It increases the temperature to a point that, someone's going to get hurt if you keep talking that way. And it's just bad. It's bad for the United States. It's bad for the world. So I wanted to deliver that message. I finally wound up talking to a guy called Yoram Hazony, who is an Israeli who famously organizes the American National Conservatism conferences. And I said to him, look, you're having a National Conservatism conference in Jerusalem this summer. You asked me to speak at the first National Conservatism conference in the United States, and I did. Obviously, I believe in national conservatism, America first. I think every nation should put its own people first. That's why you have governments. And I would like to speak at this one. And moreover, I would like you to ask your friend Benjamin Netanyahu to meet with me. And we had this sort of long back and forth. And it was, no, you cannot speak at the National Conservatism Conference because you're an anti-Semite. No, I'm not, I said. Yes, you are, he said. And I said, well, I really would like to speak to Bibi to kind of de-escalate this. And he said, it would not be in his political interest to meet with you. It's almost verbatim what he said. Therefore, no.
Would you guys support a leader that said that? That said, oh, it's not in my political interest to speak with you. I only talk to people that agree with me. That kind of sounds like the left, doesn't it? Well, now the new left is, I shouldn't say the new left, but the new bad guys, the new establishment, the new deep state. This is the Israeli government. I mean, I don't know how else to put it.
So then I realized, you're dealing with people who are unreasonable, who are inflexible, who are in fact fanatical. And then add to that, of course, that my tax dollars are paying them. It was all pretty distressing. So that was the backdrop behind our very brief and highly intense trip to Israel. So we show up on Wednesday, fly in from Europe, again, at great expense. And show up at the diplomatic terminal at Ben Gurion Airport where this interview is going to take place, which is bizarre in itself. A filthy building. The windows are so dirty in the terminal you can't see out them barely. There's like exposed drywall. The whole thing is depressing and grim. There's litter outside. Like, what is this? This is the diplomatic terminal in Israel. I thought that was very strange. Having been in a lot of diplomatic terminals, I've never seen a rattier one. We go in, and Huckabee's there, and of course he's totally friendly, as he always is. Very, very friendly guy, and cheerful, and we sort of chat, and the whole place is filled with these guys in T-shirts, thuggish-looking guys in T-shirts who are some kind of security. So we do the interview. You're about to watch it. It's very long, at 2.5 hours-ish, and I try my hardest to be friendly. I think I kind of succeeded. You can judge for yourself. But I really got the sense, and again, you can decide as you watch it, that Huckabee was not able to answer any of the questions, but also not really in charge. You really got the feeling of a guy sort of trying his best to repeat the talking points, but very constrained, like unable to say certain things.
And it is strange because he's the U.S. ambassador in Israel. And if you watch this whole interview, or at least some of the highlights, it comes across as Tucker is defending Israel over and over and over again. And it's like, do you represent Israel or do you represent the United States? Because at one point, he was praising the IDF. And in the interview, he even mentions that the IDF is the most, they're the most careful military in the world. They take more precautions than any military. It's like, oh, so you're putting the IDF ahead of the United States military? That's pretty strange. And like I said in my last video, the whole Israel is this holy land and this is the God's chosen land. And, when it comes to the biblical justifications of Israel's actions, it feels very cult-like. Very, very cult-like. Like I said, I was raised Catholic, and I do not believe that God chose the modern-day Jew as the chosen person and singled them out. I think all of us are God's chosen people. I think in the Bible, they were talking about Abraham's people from the Bible. But now you have Jews from all over the country, all over the world, I should say, that are considered the chosen people. That just doesn't line up to me. It just doesn't make any sense.
Not because those things might harm the interest of the U.S. government. He was happy to attack, for example, the U.S. military and say they're more brutal than the Israeli military. Okay. But unwilling to say certain things because they might reflect poorly on the Israeli government. And you sort of thinking about this for a second, you're like, wait, you're the U.S. ambassador. You're our representative to a foreign country. Why is your red line criticism of that country? Shouldn't you be representing us? And it was very obvious he was representing the Israelis. Obvious. And again, you can judge for yourself. But anyway, so we do this interview. It was cordial. And at the end, we're set to fly out. We have a time. We have to get out. And the plane is sitting right outside. And we're ready to go. And for some reason, the Israelis still have our passports. There are 5 of us there. And 4 of us are flying out on this plane. One's flying out commercial with our gear. So my business partner and I, we're standing there. We've never left the airport, never went anywhere. But our 2 producers have spent the night before in Tel Aviv. And they're called into rooms and given the 3rd degree.
Introducing Strikeman, a dry fire training system that allows you to...
Now, keep in mind, they're about to get on a plane and leave. In fact, we're late. We have to get out of there. We have a slot to get out. And security, whoever this is, won't let them go. So I don't really know what's going on at this point. I'm like, where are our guys? We got to get out of here. So one of them comes out and he says, that was the weirdest experience in my life. They asked me questions about the interview. Who did you speak to? Keep in mind, this was like 8 feet from where we did the interview. Well, the U.S. ambassador, Mike Huckabee, what did you talk about? Why did you ask those questions? Was it a hostile interview? And of course, everything in the diplomatic terminal is taped. Everything in Israel is taped. It's a police state. It's a surveillance state, obviously. You go to Israel, they put software on your phone. Everybody knows this. Okay, they're constantly spying.
Hold on. Can anybody in the comments just... like, is this true? If I were to take a vacation to Israel and visit Tel Aviv, would there be weird software on my phone? Would every single room be recording me? Like, how true is this? Because if that's the case, then they don't have the same values as us in the United States. Like, look, a lot of Zionists will say that the United States and Israel, they have the same values. They're like the same country, basically. I don't think so, because isn't it illegal to just like wiretap and record audio all over the place, like in public settings? I don't know. Someone in the comments, please check that for me.
On you more than probably any other country. And so they know the answers to these questions, but they're asking my producer, like, where do you work? How many people work there? Do you go to the office? Where is the office? What are their names? They're doing like an intel op and humiliation exercise on my producer. This isn't security. We're leaving right now. And they're holding his passport. The interrogator is holding the passport in his hand as he's asking these questions. So he's telling me this. And I said, this is the most outrageous thing I've ever heard. Huckabee's gone by this point. You're an American citizen who's just had a conversation with the U.S. ambassador, and some thug is demanding details of that conversation? And I hope you didn't answer. And he's like, no, I didn't. I don't know what to say. Meanwhile, our last guy, the youngest man who was traveling with us, our last producer, is still in a room being questioned. So I pull over one of the guys and said, we got to get out of here. So I don't know what this is about. It's outrageous. And, there's nothing I can do about this point, but we got to go. And this woman comes up to me and says, look, let's just go. We're going to bring you to the plane and he'll come later. I said, no, it's my producer. He's being interrogated, asked totally over the top, fully inappropriate questions that have nothing to do with security at all. Pull up your website, show us your text exchanges with other people on your staff. What are your politics like? And again, what did you say to the U.S. ambassador and what did he say back to you? Those are not relevant questions if you're trying to keep your country secure.
How is it that Tucker goes to Russia and does an interview with Putin outside of the airport and has better security and protection in Russia? But then he goes to Israel and they interrogate his producers? It's crazy. It's insane.
Those are intel questions. And they're over the top. And I said, I want this guy out now. Let's go. We got to go. And they said, no, just leave him here. We'll bring him to the plane later. Twice they told me that. Just leave your guy behind. No, I don't think so. So I was enraged by this. get on the plane. We get a text from a reporter who somehow knew that this had happened. I have no idea how.
And by the way, guys, people like Officer Tatum, I have no respect for him. He made a video yesterday commenting saying that Tucker Carlson said that Tucker Carlson himself was interrogated and Tucker Carlson's a liar and he's disingenuous, blah, 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 blah. Guys, did Tucker Carlson say that he got interrogated? No, he said his producers got interrogated. So Officer Tatum and people like Laura Loomer and the Ben Shapiros, those type of people are putting out misinformation. They are lying, trying to spin Tucker's story. Tucker didn't say he got interrogated. He said his producers did. But Officer Tatum will lie to you and say, oh, Tucker lied about being interrogated. He's disingenuous. Fuck Officer Tatum. Let's keep going.
I had no interest in publicizing it, actually. There was, a long trail that showed that the U.S. Embassy had been coordinating against us in a public relations battle before we even got there. They were leaking that we demanded to do it at the airport because we were afraid to go into Israel. We're cowards. Okay, we're cowards. Right. And so I just said to the reporter by text, they pulled my guys into a room, interrogating them. This is outrageous, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The interesting thing is, I never heard from Huckabee or anybody to this moment from the U.S. Embassy about what security did to my producers. They didn't ask us. And instead, Huckabee went out and called me a liar. So it raises, again, the question, who exactly is Huckabee working for? We're American citizens in a foreign country. He's our ambassador. He represents our country. We pay his salary, but he's taking the side of the foreign government without even calling to say, hey, what happened to you at the airport? Did you get hassled? Did your guys get hassled? No. He just immediately repeats their lies without even consulting us. So, what are we looking at here? We're looking at the reality, which is if you're an American in Israel, you can be certain that your government will take the side of the Israeli government and not your side. And really, is that so different from the experience of Americans in the United States? Can you be sure that your government will take your side over the Israeli government? No, of course not. They will always take the Israeli government's side over yours. And that's the core problem.
Yes, this is a giant box of beef sticks because Paleo Valley is running a sale where they're up to 35% off. These beef sticks.
Even if you support a war with Iran, I think the most pressing issue for Americans is that we kill the Ayatollah or whatever. You still have a fair expectation that your government, because it is yours, you pay for it, it exists to serve you, and for no other reason, you have an expectation that your government will take your side against a foreign government. But the daily lived reality, the obvious truth, visible to every single American, is that's the opposite of reality. In fact, if you criticize Israel in your country, your government will work to censor you. If there's a standoff between you and Bibi, you know whose side your government's going to take, Bibi's side. That is not sustainable. That is too humiliating. It's too clearly an inversion of the natural order. Your government exists for you, not for a foreign government. But that's not how we live in this country or in Israel. So that's what we learned. And one last thing. The Israelis apparently went, probably with the help of Mike Huckabee, went to the surveillance tape inside the diplomatic terminal and pulled some clip. And they're, of course, getting all their little bots online to promote it, of me with my arm around somebody to show that actually I'm lying about what happened. That person was our driver who drove us from the plane to the terminal, a short drive. Very nice guy, good guy, Israeli guy. And right when we arrived, and he said, could I get a picture? Of course. He's a nice man. So I just put my arm around him, took a picture. That's what that is. That was before the interview. It was before our producers were hassled by the thugs and asked ridiculous questions. It was before any of this happened. So that's just another installment of the propaganda war. Thought we'd give you the backstory on that. People...
Guys, that makes me sick to hear. Our tax dollars go to pay Israelis that don't even represent us. Mike Huckabee doesn't give a shit about Americans. He won't protect an American that's doing an interview in Israel. He sides with the Israelis. He's calling Tucker a liar. He doesn't want to protect Tucker. He'd rather interrogate him. This just makes me sick, and it convinces me more and more and more that the U.S. is controlled by Israel. That Israel has a strong influence. They give billions of dollars to our politicians. Our politicians do their bidding. Israel is the new establishment, guys. And if we're in a full-blown war with Iran, there's only one country to blame. Obviously, it's Israel, and then the United States for sucking Israel's dick. But I just find it very, very sickening that there's Zionists in America that side with Israel over the United States, that get super offended when you criticize Israel. I just can't take it, man. I can't stand it. But anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share, and hit the bell on my YouTube at Townsley R, and follow me on X at Ryan Townsley. This is Townsley R signing out. Bye-bye.